How are you, Dave?
I'm great. Hey, Rich.
So what's going on there in Cleveland? What is the sense you're getting in this town, Dave?
There is excitement. They recognize that the Cavs have won their last 8 home playoff games during the postseason. Obviously, they opened up with that disappointing loss to the Indiana Pacers, but 8-1 overall. And as close as things were in games 1 and 2, there is no need. There's no need or no reason to look at the series as being over. The recent history, obviously, with the Boston Celtics looking really good against the Cavs in games 1 and 2 at TD Garden, and then the Cavs winning by 30 in game 3 gives some recent history to back up that opinion. And, my straw poll of players, training staff members, coaches on the Cavs tells me that there's still belief inside that locker room.
All right. So then before we get to that through the prism of game 1, I want to continue talking game 3 with you, sir. What's the wrinkle? What's the change? Or is it just like rolling the same guys out and just assuming the home court will get a better result?
Lou says he's going to give a chance to Rodney Hood. I don't know if that is, okay, here's this guy that is capable of scoring 20 for us, and he's a 6'9", rangy guy who can switch off to Kevin Durant, as much as Jordan Clarkson can't hit a shot, and it can't get any worse. So let's try this other player and see what happens. Give him 10 to 15 minutes, and if he gives us 6 to 8 points off the bench, that's a bonus. That's all good. That's the only stated thing that's going on in terms of mentality. They want to play more physical, and you hear that in just about every playoff series, but that seems to be what they think will unlock them in terms of taking the tenor of the game over. I mean, game 1 was the slowest pace game that the Warriors played all postseason. And game 2, the Warriors were able to speed it up a little bit, get their imprint on the game more so. The Cavs feel like the physicality will help them slow it down, help them play possession basketball. That's one good thing they've done over the first 2 games. They haven't turned the ball over. And when they're doing that, LeBron James is the basketball savant, and he can pick apart the defense.
All right, and as much as I really do want to go back to game 1 and use your game 1 reference to turn the page, I'm not ready to do that just yet, Dave McMenamin. We had Byron Scott in studio yesterday, and I presented to him what which Chauncey Billups said at the end of the game 2, that maybe the Cavs should activate Kendrick Perkins if they really want to unleash somebody who's physical and angry. And get physical. He's the guy to do it. Byron Scott said, "Why not?" Because you got your backs against the wall. Although the caveat being that he is such a liability on a pick and roll defense that Ty Lue may not do that. Is there any consideration to do that, Dave?
I love Byron, and Kendrick has been active for a handful of these 20 playoff games they played this year, but I don't think that is in the plan. So Kendrick, he works hard where he is at this stage of his career, but you watch him pregame, he's not the guy that has mobility to play an NBA game at this point.
So that's not even. I could sense by your kind response right there, and also your. What'd you say? Now you know Dave is longer than I do. Is that a little bit of derision in that response? Right there?
No, he just knows it's not a real possibility.
Okay, so just stop talking about it is what you're saying, Dave.
Yeah, kind of, but,
okay.
No disrespect to you, Byron.
No, not at all. No, not at all, Dave. All right, now let's turn to game 1. LeBron's statement yesterday that, when told that he is receiving criticism because in the real-time moment captured by the NBA entertainment cameras after the all-time rock pull by J.R. Smith and prior to starting the overtime, LeBron James just went down a rabbit hole in which he could not believe the misfortune that J.R. Smith had just brought on everybody, as well as perhaps his coach, because he wanted to find out how many timeouts there were, and it had confirmed to him that this could have been stopped with a timeout. That criticism, his response was, hey, I'm in the NBA Finals. How much more can I carry my teammates? How did that sit with everybody, Dave?
Tristan Thompson, I spoke to him about this specifically, and he said, one, there's always the camera on LeBron more so than anybody else, and we've all had these moments that the world doesn't see. 2, he's allowed to have that moment of raw frustration. We can pick him up in that moment. It's not always on him to pick us up. He had 49 points at that point of the game. What more can he do? And that's what you did see. You saw Jeff Green kind of cradle LeBron's head and get in his ear. You saw Kyle Korver clapping his hands, trying to create some positive energy in that huddle. That's okay. LeBron James doesn't have to do everything, including selling the popcorn at the arena for the Cavs. Sometimes the non-bronze, I love that term. I haven't seen it yet. I love that term you mentioned. Sometimes the non-bronze can carry that load. Actually, I think it's much more healthy for the Cavs team when they do so. So I understand the look of dejection on LeBron's face is remarkable, and that's something that's going to stick with people's heads along with everything else, the missed free throw and J.R. Smith dribbling out to the three-point line. But it's not his job to also always set the mental tone for the Cavs. There's other players there who are professionals who can carry that weight.
Is there any heat on Ty Lue in Cleveland for not calling the timeout, even though he's in a very geographically unsound position to get somebody's attention to do it?
Yeah, some people have brought that up, but I mean, you're talking him being close to 50 feet away from the play, opposite end of the court, less than 5 seconds to go. The assumption when your player grabs the offensive rebound in the paint and it's a tied game that he's going to go up with it, and then the next assumption is when he starts to take it out to the three-point line, he's going to shoot a three because that's just what JR does. At that point, yeah, maybe you could have said that 0.9 seconds left, he should have been on the floor just like LeBron was calling timeout. But LeBron was on the court, 0.9 seconds left, feet away from Ed Malloy. And if LeBron can't get the timeout call there, what hope does Ty Lue have getting the call 50 feet away?
Couple more minutes with Dave McMenamin here on the Rich Eisen Show, part of the Honda Insider segment from ESPN. So tell me if I'm reading too much into this. LeBron sit down with Rachel Nichols, and she asks him about his relationship with Dan Gilbert, and we saw he basically just breezed right by him like he was in the HOV lane for the Eastern Conference Finals championship ceremony, the trophy presentation ceremony. And LeBron's response, Dave, was, "We'll see," when it comes down to leaving on July 1 or his free agency decision. And then hearing him yesterday basically saying, we're at the NBA Finals. How much more can I carry, my teammates? That these two, really those responses give a glimpse into him thinking, I'm not really a fan of the owner, and I'm not a fan of the roster. You mentioned Rodney Hood, Clarkson. These guys that were brought in mid-February have not panned out here in June. What do you think?
Right.
Am I connecting dots here that are appropriate?
No, actually, I don't think you're reading too into much at all. I just want to give a quick context on two things there.
Sure.
One, he also said that he has a great working relationship with Dan Gilbert, and there was a private moment not caught on camera in the locker room after Game 7 between Dan and LeBron, and also Dan and Rich Paul. So, as icy as that relationship has been, it has a level of stability right now. That said, he does not make those comments to Dan Gilbert about Dan Gilbert to Rachel with, it just coming off the top of his head. LeBron James is very calculated in his messaging. And on the eve of the NBA Finals, he wanted it to be known that he was not a fan of the Kyrie Irving trade, on the record for the first time. The day of the NBA Finals, Dan Gilbert puts out a series of tweets, including complimenting Kobe Altman, the rookie GM, for not only the midseason trades that they made, but for the Kyrie Irving trade, saying that we wouldn't be where we are had we not made that trade. So that is some public wrangling between LeBron James and Dan Gilbert trying to position themselves on who was right about the Kyrie Irving trade, with the biggest game of the Cavs season coming up in just hours. And that is where there is something to point to, that as much as they have been able to work together over the last 4 years, there is a level of mistrust that exists all the way back to the decision in 2010.
So then why was, Dave, Kyrie Irving traded, right? I mean, if the code red, why was the code red ordered if LeBron was asking Kyrie not to be touched, to use the few good men phrase there, Dave? And unless, because at the time, the narrative was that LeBron and Kyrie couldn't be Batman and Robin anymore. Robin wanted to be his own Batman.
Correct. So Kyrie Irving was traded because he did not want to play for the Cavs anymore. LeBron James his point of contention wasn't necessarily that the worst thing for our franchise would be to trade Kyrie Irving. his point of contention was to trade Kyrie Irving to our conference rival and only get that in return is a bad idea.
All right. So do you think tonight's the last night that Cavs fans see LeBron James suited up with some hope on the line? Dave?
No, I think they win tonight. I think, like I said earlier when we first started talking, there is a great degree of belief amongst the people that I've spoke to in this Cavs organization, and that's half the battle. They have a effective game plan where, they've been able to take care of the basketball and not let the Warriors completely get away from them offensively. And they should have some shots fall and have some of their role players play well, like the same way Sean Livingston and JaVale McGee played out of their minds in Game 2 at Oracle. So I think it's a 2-1 series. All that gets the Cavs is probably Andre Iguodala making a series debut in Game 4. And if you don't get that game, it's over in 5.
So you think Iguodala does not play tonight?
I don't think he does.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. So no Iguodala. And if I'm telling my kids we need to pull up to watch Kendrick Perkins play tonight, say Paw Patrol instead, basically is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised on that
Okay.
one.
All right, Dave. Appreciate the insight as always and love our chats. Thanks for calling in.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Rich.
You bet. That's Dave McMenamin at MC10 on Twitter.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.